Darius Garland is the definition of a creative hooper. It's tough to even put a finger on his signature moves and techniques because he's always finding new things to do on the court. This is something that comes naturally for some, but can also be studied and trained for others. Let's check it out. So first is his ball handling and movement with the ball. And this may be a hot take, but I think he can end up on that Kyrie level in terms of fluidity, creativity, and overall just excitement to watch. But that's an argument for a different time. So you'll notice that he's constantly shifting his feet to different positions he can explode from. Whether it's a slight hop backwards, a little rotation of the feet, kind of a stutter step right here. This is going to do a couple things for him. Number one, it just creates some unpredictability because when he's constantly shifting and changing up his base, it's tough to pinpoint when and what position he'll explode from. Number two, it's constantly shifting the defender slightly and forcing them to react a bit, which could then open up an opportunity for him to take. And lastly, to me, this is a really good way to find comfortable positions to explode from. So this includes being able to get his feet behind him efficiently and powerfully. Ultimately, this is how we accelerate, when our feet go behind our center of mass, so we can then push off downhill. When you're as creative as him in terms of making this happen in any situation, it makes sense how quick his first and second steps are. And there's some other physical and skill qualities to this, of course, like ankle stiffness, stride length, and more. But this is a really important concept to understand. You'll also notice the constant unpredictability, which I touched on a bit earlier. The timing of his moves and explosions many times are crazy innovative, and they don't give that defender any chance of predicting it. Plus, he's able to explode from unique positions, which aren't usually expected by on-ball defenders. This is a common denominator of some of the top ball handlers in the world, and it's something anybody can manipulate, but does take some work. Now, once he gets moving downhill, he's really creative with these slight speed changes. It's nothing crazy, but most times more so a split second where he slows down and puts the brakes on, then right back to full speed. Many times we exaggerate speed changes, especially on these kind of hip swivel type moves, which makes sense. But sometimes it's even more effective when it's just a very slight speed change to throw that defender off without letting them catch back up. And this works. That little flinch of slow speed oftentimes will freeze defenders and give them a wide open lane. In terms of control of the ball, one thing he really does well is letting that ball float in his hand as he moves. This gives him more control, allows him to move legally with the ball in hand, and plays even more into that unpredictability.
Garland step back, and he a great passer. He gets under. He's gonna kill you. Left-handers in the game at the same time.
Next, his crossover. Of course, he's good at these, but to me, how he gets out of these is even more impressive. Sometimes players can cross you, but once they're done with that move, once they shift that defender, they're not great at finding their footing or getting out of there to actually create space. But for him, he's really able to sprint out of it, create space, or separate laterally, and then turn that into a shot, a downhill attack, whatever. And finally, he's one of those players who is truly a professional problem solver. In other words, he's one of those guys who's so hard to stop because every time you think you have him in a bad position or even stopped, he finds his way out of it, and he takes advantage of it. And you'll see that this isn't just ball handling either. This is his finishing, this is his shooting, and although some guys like him seem like naturals, I truly do believe we can train this quality. Next up, finishing. To me, he's one of the more creative finishers in the league. Whether it's his ability to use that inside hand to really reach out and once again be unpredictable, a quick scoop where he has the control to get it up right out of his hand and finish rapidly, or slowing down to throw off the defender's timing and finish, he has a crazy amount of options he can get to. Plus, his ability to manipulate the ball mid-air is really impressive. Although it sounds good to say go straight up with the ball on finishes, most times when you're around defenders, this isn't ideal. Being able to move the ball around to prevent the shot blocker or reachers from predicting where you're going with the ball is key. Plus, many times dropping the ball in mid-air is an absolute must if you have to hang a little bit to get some momentum on it on the way up. And although he clearly has a ton of finesse finishing-wise, he can also be a bulldog with it too. Seeking out contact, hitting first, and doing it with intensity. So when you combine those two, looking for and creative contact with the fluidity and adaptability to finish with finesse, that's an elite level finisher. I also talk about 2-foot finishes all the time, and although it's not used nearly as much in the NBA as college, he's really good at getting to 2 feet around the rim, which is usually a more powerful, controlled finish, especially in close quarters with contact. Plus, it allows him to change direction on that finish. Then on the other hand, with his 1-foot finishes, he carries speed through them very well. And what I mean by that is that many players feel at least slightly out of control when they're coming in at a super high speed, so they kind of slow down and aren't able to get that ball to the backboard as fast. For Garland, he's able to keep that speed through the finish without letting it take him out of control at the rim. Next up is shot making. One thing you'll notice here is that his dribble pickups from 3 are crazy fast. Not often with him is there a lag from the time the dribble hits the floor up into that shot motion. And guess what that plays in perfectly to? You already knew. Unpredictability. When it's tough to predict him off the dribble and when that shot's going up, it's over. So not only does he get into it quickly, but the shot itself is a pretty damn quick trigger. He's honestly more under that kind of Steph, Trae Young, quick, one-motion shot style, which is big for how basketball is developing. Being able to not only get the ball into the shot from the dribble, but also up into the air in milliseconds, opens up a ton of doors for him, who seems to get whatever he wants from 3 and still shoots a really high percentage. And with this high level energy transfer and fluidity, one motion shots boost his range, so he'll definitely extend pretty deep versus a more Kyrie or Klay Thompson shot style. It's a little bit more 2 motion. Not that theirs are bad, obviously, just way different. But having this kind of 1 motion fluid shot does help Garland push that range a bit. Yet, and this is really important to understand for younger hoopers, especially closer around the rim, he'll kind of adjust his release since he's shooting from closer, and it helps him fade really well and make these kind of short mid-range jumpers. Obviously, he can't have that same release on a 30-footer as a 10-foot fader, and he's still able to knock down shots at a high clip when fading away. This is a great skill for scoring guards and is one that can absolutely be trained. And then lastly, his pick and roll skills. First off, his pace. The dude is fast, and you've seen that, but he's constantly going much slower than he would in an ISO situations. Like many times 40 to 50% of top speed. And this is something that a lot of the best pick and roll players do. But why? Well, in general, a slower pace equals more time to make decisions, let plays develop, and overall just more control. And in a pick and roll situation, do you really need to go pedal to the metal when the defense is behind you and you already have an inherent advantage? So this really helps with decision making, saving energy, creating more makeable shots than if he was consistently going at 100%. And unpredictability. So one tool he uses here is this little hop. Many times he won't turn himself to the basket, but instead be more turned towards the sideline. This way he's protecting that ball by having his body in between the defender and that ball. So because he's protected, he's able to slow down here and play more with pace. And he has a ton of options out of this little hop. He can shoot out of it, he can explode out of it, he can counter out of it, he can shoot floaters out of it. And if you're able to find positions like this where the possibilities are endless for you and it's comfortable for you, this is a huge addition to your game. Another pick and roll quality to notice is his ability to throw that ball out and cover ground. Now, this is a tough thing to do because the ball is literally out of your hand, at least for a millisecond, but it's huge because it allows him to cover ground, turn downhill really fast, and use his speed to his advantage. Oh, and if they go under, it's over. He cuts it short, usually uses a little hop to set his feet rapidly, and then uses that quick pickup and quick shot to knock it down. So hopefully you learned something from this video. Hopefully you can apply some of this to your own game. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at ByAnyMeansBasketball for a lot more like this. Stay tuned.